Hello and welcome to the AMD Athlon processor briefing. My name is Robert, and today I want to walk you through the reimagined AMD Athlon processor for the desktop PC market. You'll be able to buy this processor from Amazon, Newegg, and other retail distributors. At the back half of the presentation, my colleague David will take over and present AMD Athlon Pro and other Ryzen Pro updates for the commercial market. So for the channel side, for what you can buy at Newegg and Amazon and sites like that, let's dig into AMD Athlon. It is the AMD Athlon with Radeon Vega graphics, which already tells you something about the part. But rewinding the clock a little bit through the story of AMD in 2017 and 2018, we've been on a very intended and methodical approach of deploying the Zen architecture into the market. Of course, we started with Ryzen for high-performance computers and for mainstream computers with Ryzen 3. Then we went into the HEDT market, made that the Threadripper market, and we continue to have amazing success there with the second-gen Threadripper. And then we circled back again to the sort of mainstream market with the Ryzen processor with Radeon Vega graphics, our first Zen-based APU. And with these three products, we have mainstream, performance, and high-end desktop. So the question becomes, what about that last segment? What about those entry-level PCs that don't yet have all the goodness that Zen technology brings to the table? The performance, the power efficiency, the features. That is what we are addressing with the new AMD Athlon processor, and the answer is Athlon. It comes with Radeon Vega graphics built in, and the reason why we chose to continue with the Athlon brand primarily is because it's trusted. This is a brand that's been around for 20 years in various forms. And what's true of every Athlon CPU is that people relied on them to provide a great everyday experience at a great price. I'm thinking back to my first Athlon, which was a Socket A Athlon 900. I bought it with money I collected from a paper route. I was 13 years old. And I bought that CPU because it was the best combination of price and performance available. And that spirit is alive and well today in the Athlon that you see here. For people in this market, the things that really matter are versatility, reliability, and performance. People are going to have these computers for 4 or 5 years, and they want to make sure that their money is well spent, that their computer is going to meet their needs, be it homework or web browsing, whatever, and they want it to run cool and quiet, and that is what the Athlon processor with Radeon Vega graphics brings to the table. So, I know you have questions already about how our product stack is now shaping up with Athlon. Of course, Threadripper is at the very top, not shown here on the slide, but then we have Ryzen 7, 5, and 3, which will of course continue forward, and then Athlon slots in strategically at the bottom end of the stack for those everyday computers, those entry-level PCs, and it's taking the place of select AMD A-series APUs. So as a whole, AMD A-series APUs will continue forward, and Athlon X4 will continue forward, but we are using this new Athlon at strategic price points, which we'll talk more about in this presentation. So right off the bat, we have one model of AMD Athlon to introduce, and it is the 200GE, and that's a 3.2 gigahertz processor with 2 cores, 4 threads. It uses Zen cores, just like the AMD Ryzen processor with Radeon Vega graphics. So if you're familiar with the overall benefits of the codename Raven Ridge product, that is what's being used here for the 200GE. What's special this time is that this is a 35-watt processor, so quite low power, runs cool and quiet, just $55. This is a really nice chip for the everyday computer, something that does homework, something that you might build for mom and dad, something that might power a home theater PC, something where you just need snappy performance and a little bit of gaming, and you don't want to worry about it, and it doesn't cost a lot. And that's really what the 200GE brings to the table. speaking of the versatility of this CPU, this is what we really envision the processor being used for. I mentioned already casual gaming in the family PC, homework, but this is the kind of processor you might set up for a desktop at work for a small business. You might just browse the web on it. You might just do email on it. Anything that you'd want to do on your PC that just gets stuff done, Athlon is a great choice for that. It's a real workhorse for everyday computing, and that's really the spirit of the CPU. What's also true, and what you may have surmised from the name of the processor, of course, is that it is powered by the Zen architecture, the award-winning Zen architecture, which continues to collect awards for its performance, its thermals, its power consumption. It is a really fantastic all-around processor that's put AMD back in the fight in all sorts of market segments now, from entry-level all the way up to HEDT, showing the scalability of Zen, the really, really remarkable scalability of Zen. And then on the graphics side, of course, Radeon Vega. We have 3 Vega compute units in this part, which is going to give people some surprisingly robust HD gaming. Of course, video is everything these days, Netflix, Hulu. Of course, the CPU can tackle that with gusto, and then just sort of smooth web browsing. Today, web pages are composited with the GPU, and you need a surprising amount of horsepower for that. So web rendering is another thing that Radeon Vega excels at, and both of those ingredients are, of course, in the reimagined Athlon. So getting into the nuts and bolts, what does that combination give you? On the GPU side, we're about 67% faster than the competing Pentium G4560. And this is pretty remarkable because the Pentium G4560 is a 54-watt processor. The 200GE is 35 watts. So they're consuming half again as much power and thermal energy, but we're offering 67% more graphics performance. And when you flip over to the CPU side, again looking at a 2-core 4-thread CPU versus another 2-core 4-thread CPU, but one of them has 50% more power, electrical power, the 35-watt Athlon 200GE is remarkably close to that 54-watt CPU, just 3% back. And so to look at that kind of GPU performance and look at that kind of CPU performance versus the power consumption, that means Athlon 200GE is twice the power efficiency of the Pentium G4560, twice. And that really speaks to how efficient Vega is and how efficient Zen is when you scale them down into low power envelopes like the 35-watt Athlon 200GE. And if you're curious about the 2X, it's about 1.5x on the CPU side advantage and about 2.5x on the graphics side, and you average that out, it's about 2 times ahead. So that's where the 2x power efficiency comes from. So Athlon is really showing the power efficiency of Zen here and the power efficiency of Vega here. And for those consumers who want a cool, quiet, reliable, high-performance PC that they can use every day, this CPU is delivering. And as we dig deeper into the performance, starting with the CPU side, we said it was about 3% back overall in single-core multi-thread workloads. You can see that's true. We've got Cinebench about 3% back, Passmark 1%, and then you've got PC Market 10 Extended, 3D rendering in Blender, office productivity. These are all leadership or tie positions for the Athlon 200GE. So overall, win some, lose some against a CPU that is 50% more electrical power, more thermal capacity. That's just a remarkable achievement for the Athlon. And gen over gen, looking back at the 35-watt AMD A6 9500E, last year's 35-watt CPU from AMD, we're talking 2 times more performance in most of these workloads. So just a heroic generational story and punching well above its weight class at 35 watts versus the competition. Now, what makes Athlon so great is that it fits also into the AMD socket AM4 infrastructure. So that infrastructure can support the AMD Ryzen processor with Radeon Vega graphics. It supports Ryzen, so you can go from a little 2-core, 4-thread AMD Athlon 200GE all the way up to the 8-core, 16-thread 2700X processor, the Ryzen 7, with its amazing gaming performance, and that's just an incredible scalability story. So anybody who wants to dip their toe into building computers now at an affordable price and maybe grow with that platform over time can definitely do that with socket AM4. Motherboards start at $50 with the AMD A320 chipset, and then you get the latest PC features. So if somebody is buying an Athlon today, they don't have to worry that they're missing out on any of the state-of-the-art connectivity features. They get USB 3.1 Gen 2, they get support for NVMe drives, they can have DDR4 and 4K displays. And then of course, even on the A320 chipset, you can still overclock memory. So a little bit of overclocking that the competing platforms in this price band don't offer. And now if we look at the upgradability of the platform, talking about adding in components over time to grow with that platform, here what we've done is we've added in a GTX 1050 GPU. So what happens if somebody builds an affordable $500-ish PC and adds a discrete graphics card on top? Again, generationally, really solid story. Tie or 25% uplifts in many titles like CSGO, GTA 5, PUBG, Overwatch. 150 million plus people play these games. And Athlon is more than ready to power a system with a discrete graphics card thrown in to get people into these experiences, right? People are gaming more and more all the time, and that is now more accessible than ever with the Athlon 200GE. Flipping over to the Vega side, recently you may have seen a study that Radeon software is the most stable graphics drivers in the industry. So thinking about that peace of mind people want to have for 4 or 5 years of owning this computer, software is a huge part of that equation. And with Radeon software, we are definitely doing our part to ensure a quality experience for people. Of course, you have access to FreeSync, which is a technology near and dear to my heart, which makes really smooth gaming a reality and tends to be most beneficial on APU-like products where the frame rate is somewhere between 30 and 60 on a regular basis. So having access to FreeSync and $100 FreeSync monitors is an incredible value proposition. And of course, that video playback I talked about and the accelerated photo editing and video editing that Radeon Vega can offer on applications like Photoshop. That's just a really nice all-around experience for people. And what is most remarkable about this Athlon 200GE, aside from punching well above its weight on the CPU side, is its graphics performance. The built-in Radeon Vega 3 graphics chip on this is just astronomically fast compared to AMD's previous gen or what our competitor has to offer. And we're talking very playable frame rates on these super popular games played by 150 million or more people. So over 110 frames a second in League of Legends, over 60 FPS in CSGO, Overwatch, nearly 60 FPS. You know, this is the perfect CPU for many markets in this world: South America, Eastern Europe, China, APJ region, anywhere where the $500 or $600 PC is very popular. This kind of performance is unbeatable in the segment. So the Athlon 200GE with Radeon Vega 3 graphics is really pulling out all the stops on the APU front. So to briefly summarize, people want a cool and quiet computer. That is job number one for people. They want a PC that is out of the way, don't have to think about it, don't have to hear from it. AMD Athlon definitely delivers with twice the performance per watt of our competitor. And then if you're dipping your toe into PC gaming, the Radeon Vega 3 graphics can give you 720p gaming at very playable frame rates in games that tons of people are playing. So you can get started with your friends. And then finally, the price, just killer at $55 US. That is real outstanding performance at a remarkable price, exactly what the Athlon brand has been known for 20 years and is known for again with the AMD Athlon 200GE. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague David, who will cover AMD Athlon Pro and other AMD Ryzen Pro products.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Hi, everyone. My name is David Chong, and I'm a product marketing manager here at AMD, focusing on our commercial solutions. And today I'll be going over the introduction of our newest additions for the commercial desktops, the 2nd Gen Ryzen Pro and Athlon Pro processors. So with this launch today, we continue the Ryzen product rollouts here in 2018 for both the consumer and commercial space. Earlier this year, we brought out our Ryzen processors with Radeon Vega graphics to consumer notebooks and desktops to enable those super fast, ultra-thin notebooks, as well as bringing powerful graphics for mainstream gamers with desktop processors. And we also released our 2nd Gen Ryzen CPUs for gamers and 2nd Gen Ryzen Threadripper CPUs for high-end content creators and software developers. But Ryzen hasn't only been making a big impact on the consumer space, but also the commercial space is really important for AMD as well. In May, we launched our Ryzen Pro processors with Radeon Vega graphics to enable powerful computing in thin and light laptops, as well as small form factor PCs, which brings us to today, where we complete the family stack of commercial solutions with the Athlon Pro and 2nd Gen Ryzen Pro CPUs. So briefly, before getting into the new products, it's important to talk about why having a complete product family stack is important for these commercial and enterprise environments. And it all comes down to having the right solution for the right task. So not all workers using these computing devices require the same level of performance. You could be what we call entry-level users who just need a system for basic tasks from office productivity, web browsing, and video conferencing. Or maybe you classify yourself as a mainstream user needing to heavily multitask between applications or do slightly more complex data analysis or content creation. And then there's the power users that really demand premium performance that could touch on software development, VR, or even 3D modeling. The point of this is that at a single commercial environment, you'll likely need to support a fleet of systems to address each of these different personas. And with that, you need the choice of different products to best address each of these users' needs. So with that, we're proud to have the new additions to the AMD Pro desktop processors, the AMD Athlon Pro to meet the needs of the entry-level users, and the 2nd Gen Ryzen Pro CPUs for those power users. And when you combine that with the Ryzen Pro CPUs with Radeon Vega graphics that we launched earlier this year in May, we have this family of AMD Pro processors that are designed to address the spectrum of desktop users for the commercial space. So let's start at the top with the 2nd Gen Ryzen Pro processors. And with all our AMD Pro processors, it's important to think about the features, performance, security, and reliability, and how they really meet the needs of the IT managers and businesses. So for those power users, we're announcing 3 models here, the Ryzen 7 Pro 2700X and 2700 with 8 cores and 16 threads of performance, and the Ryzen 5 Pro 2600 with 6 cores and 12 threads. But looking at the 2nd Gen Ryzen Pro processors as a whole, these new processors continue to provide the features and specs you'd expect for a power user. Those high cores and thread counts we previously mentioned, the faster clock speeds with boost performances such as Precision Boost 2, that I'll touch on in more detail in the next slide, up to 20 megabytes of low latency cache, And other AMD Sense-MI technology improvements means that the second-gen Ryzen Pro processors deliver up to 16% more multi-threaded performance than the first-generation products. So in addition to the architectural improvements to the 12 nanometer and Zen Plus architecture, the AMD Sense-MI technologies on these second-gen Ryzen Pro processors take advantage of the latest Precision Boost 2 and XFR2 technology that I've highlighted in orange here. These allow the CPU to reach even higher clock speeds than their first-generation counterparts. And what that means in this slide here, you can clearly see the difference in performance comparing the 2700X, 2700, and 2600 versus the previous generation 1700X, 1700, and 1600. And in Cinebench, we see up to 16% CPU performance improvements. So this generational improvement in CPU performance continues to set the standard when we line it up against the comparable products from the competition, with up to 28% more CPU performance over the competition in Cinebench here. So benchmarks are great, but we understand that real-life results are also very important. So our A&D lab team has developed a productivity test script that goes through a variety of typical tasks from using Word and PowerPoint to file compression and light photo editing in Photoshop to see how fast these different CPUs can complete these typical office productivity tasks. And our results here show that in these lightweight workloads, us versus the competition, the difference in completion time is pretty much neck and neck. Whereas with where Ryzen Pro really shines is in heavy computational workloads and demanding applications, from video editing, 3D rendering, and encoding. The extra threads on both our Ryzen 7 Pro and Ryzen 5 Pro products can significantly speed up these types of workflows over the competition and can really add up and save you time throughout the day. So next, let's switch gears and look at our Athlon Pro desktops processors with Radeon Vega graphics. And while we wanted to introduce this new brand to really target those entry-level users, you'll see that this product doesn't sacrifice with the critical security and reliability features that IT managers still expect from these kind of solutions. So today we're introducing the Athlon Pro 200DE with Radeon Vega graphics to supplement the mainstream desktop solutions like the 2200G and 2400G solutions that we introduced earlier this year, to really give those IT managers that choice to choose the right products for their users' needs, depending on whether they're looking for an entry-level desktop or a mainstream desktop. So at a really high level, the Athlon Pro GE has 2 cores and 4 threads of performance at 3.2 gigahertz and 3 Radeon Vega cores that really gives it that performance the entry-level users are expecting from their typical workloads. So when you line up the Athlon Pro 200G processor versus the competition, the Athlon Pro is positioned very strongly with comparable CPU performance, better overall system performance, but where the Athlon Pro really excels is the graphics performance with those Radeon Vega graphics cores. But given the Athlon Pro is designed for those entry-level users, in most typical environments that are just working with Word documents or web browsing, we expect the Athlon Pro to perform pretty much neck and neck and have unnoticeable differences in experience in those typical everyday tasks versus the competition. So where it really stands out with the Ryzen Pro and Athlon Pro family of processors is the feature set. So not just performance, but security and reliability features that are critical for these commercial environments. Regardless of whether you're deploying a system for entry-level or power users, you can expect to have the performance, the security, reliability that these IT managers and businesses expect. So first, let's talk about security features. And AMD takes security incredibly seriously. We leverage a lot of our core technologies from our other business units like server and semi-custom and brought those over to the commercial client space. And it's important to note that the state-of-the-art security is available on every Ryzen Pro and Athlon Pro product we've talked about today. Everything from our AMD Guard MI technology that I'll talk more about in our next slide, the built-in AES encryption engine, how we work closely with Microsoft to enable Windows 10 security features, and our memory encryption technology. So for our security features, we like to say that our security is at the silicon level. And this is because with every Ryzen Pro and Athlon Pro, we have a dedicated security coprocessor with the sole function to enable those security features. It's separate and isolated from the normal x86 cores, and the execution path is separate as well. It's on-chip and it's on-chip solution rather than an off-chip solution offered by some competing companies, and that leaves you more, whereas an off-chip solution leaves you more vulnerable to attacks from malicious sources that are trying to gain access to your data. The security coprocessor also enables us to support transparent secure memory encryption, which encrypts your data as it moves in and out of the processor. A simple analogy to this technology is to think about how BitLocker encrypts your hard drives, whereas with memory encryption, instead protects your RAM. This process is completely transparent to the OS and software you're running and has minimal performance impact. There's also our secure boot process that leverages our secure coprocessor to validate the BIOS and protect the system from the moment you push the power button. We also have trusted applications that enables real-time intrusion detection to prevent malware from attacking the BIOS and the system memory while the system is running. And even at the hardware level, the AMD Pro products are tested from the very beginning of the production chain. So next, moving on to reliability. So in contrast to the consumer space where electronics and systems are constantly cycled in and out year after year, in the enterprise commercial space, they look for a little bit more longevity. For this, we start with image stability, where we have 18 months of planned software stability for the drivers. This allows IT to deploy driver infrastructure on their systems that will be stable for up to 18 months, giving them some peace of mind. And on the hardware side, there's processor availability. So when enterprises are deploying a fleet of systems in their enterprise, it's rare for them to purchase everything they need right away. Instead, they'll want to be able to acquire hardware in stages throughout the year. So with 24 months of planned availability, there's reduced worry about needing to find hardware alternatives or substitutes, so they can continue to deploy the same hardware into their fleet throughout the year. Touching on commercial grade quality, we have a different spec level for binning of the parts that gets used on our Ryzen Pro and Athlon Pro CPUs, where we take the best silicon wafers and provide those to our customers, and enterprise class manageability. So the Ryzen Pro and Athlon Pro both support our open standard, support the open standard dash manageability, which means you can manage your devices even across a mixed infrastructure. We use open standards, and you can integrate that with your common set of tools for manageability with your IT staff. So ease of deployment is also another important consideration for IT managers. We commissioned a third-party lab to analyze how fast it is to deploy an AMD system into a business environment versus the competition. And the results revealed that time-wise, deploying a Windows 10 system pretty much takes the same amount of steps on the AMD system as the Intel system. And the process takes the same number of steps as well versus on the AMD versus the Intel system. So transitioning from one platform to the other should really have a noticeable impact from an admin perspective. So wrapping up from the security and manageability features, we're really proud to offer a full top-to-bottom stack of AMD Pro processors that offer the same security and manageability features. And that really makes it really simple for businesses and IT managers to choose the right solutions for their users' needs. And of course, I'm even more excited about the systems and solutions that are being enabled with our OEMs. So with the major OEMs such as HP, Lenovo, and Dell, you'll start seeing a spectrum of their CPU solutions within their popular EliteDesk, ThinkCenter, and Optiplex systems to really address these different commercial environments, whether you're an entry-level user, a mainstream user, or a power user. So that pretty much concludes my presentation and the introduction of the Athlon Pro and 2nd Gen Ryzen Pro processors. And what I really want to emphasize is that the AMD Pro Stack offers businesses and IT managers the choice to really choose the product they need for the different types of users they're enabling, whether it's entry-level, mainstream, or power user. And they can make this choice without worrying about any fragmentation in features because all of the products support the same security and manageability features that makes deployment really simple for them. So with that, I guess I'll hand it back.
So there it is, the AMD Athlon Pro, AMD Ryzen Pro, and AMD Athlon 200GE for the commercial and consumer markets. Of course, if you have any questions about these new SKUs or you require more technical detail or want to talk more about the performance of the platform, feel free to reach out to any of your PR contacts. We'll get that question routed to the right individuals inside AMD. We're really excited about bringing these processors to market, bringing Zen and Vega to the entry-level space, exploring that final frontier for our segmentation with the Zen brand, with the Zen architecture and the Vega architecture. We're really excited about that, and we can't wait to see what you think. Thank you.